The Test. Abu Nujum visited the monastery of a follower of Sufism, who was known as Pir or Mushid Pataugir Dalil. Dalil said, "See how in our order we dwell upon the beauties of celestial love. See how we carry out great austerities and self-denial. See how we read the classics and repeat the sayings and emulate the doings of the ancient elect. See what repute we have attained, so that we are universally admired, held up as examples, are laying the foundation of a strong house indeed." Abu Nujum said nothing. He sent one of his disciples, Atiyah, to open a prayer hall where continuous religious exercises were performed in one quarter of Dalil's city. Many of Dalil's disciples, trained to devotions and craving yet more, deserted their master and streamed to this new saint. Then Abu Nujum commissioned an ignorant miscreant to start an etheric tekia, a special structure, among whose resplendent canopies were preached and recited intoxicatingly sublime words and poems of celestial love. Another section of Dalil's people flocked there, overcome by this wonder. Then Abu Nujum opened a school where rhythmic twirling was carried out, under the instruction of the blackest-hearted knave in Samarkand, and many of the disciples of Dalil, now converted to the new observances, professed themselves fulfilled by the wonderful experience of attendance there, some even believing that miracles were effected as a result. Not content with this, the relentless Abu Nujum instructed a narrow-minded cleric to recite day and night the sayings and doings of the ancient masters, together with extensive recitations from the Sufi classics. Another portion of the unhappy Dalil's followers trooped to this holy man and drank in what he had to offer. The final experiment was the setting up of a house of repetition, in which Abu Nujum offered harsh training in formidable austerities and insisted on great sacrifices from all comers. Within its walls jostled princes and peasants, rich and poor, merchants and officials, clamouring to be tested and made to suffer for a noble aim. Out of many hundreds of Dalil's original disciples, 3 only now remained faithful to their teacher. Abu Nujum visited him in a monastery and said, "I have done all I can to show yourself to you. Now it remains for you to test these 3, to see whether they are really followers of anything, or whether through habit and sentiment they remain with you, perhaps only in defiance of the general behaviour, as it is to be expected from some under all circumstances." Dalil threw himself at the feet of the real teacher and said, "Now that I have learnt that I am suffering from shallow vanity and that my disciples are deluded and desiring showmen, is there not just a particle of hope that I may follow you?" Abu Nujum said, "So long as you believe that you dislike vanity and obtain no pleasure from others relying upon you, you cannot. What we have to sell is entrusted to us by its owner. It is not fitting that we should sell it for such meagre coin as physical suffering, money which people want to give away to buy something, or sensual pleasure imagined to be service of God." Dalil said, "But are we not told in our traditions that it is noble to sacrifice, for example?" Abu Nujum said, "Those remarks were originally addressed to people who had overcome vanity. If you have not done the first act, how can you hope to try to practice the second?" It was this remarkable revelation which produced the real humility of Dalil, who afterwards became the true guide of Turkestan. The 100 Books. One of the sheikhs of the Khwajagan, or the masters, was told that he should appear within 3 months before the clerics and lawyers of Turkestan, in order to satisfy them that he was teaching in the realm of Shariat, the traditional law of Islam. He offered to send his students to be examined as to whether they knew the holy books and the ceremonies, but the king answered that he was to be examined according to the regularity and propriety of his works, as all the men of thought are examined. Now this sage had in fact written no books. 300 of his disciples were set to work to produce, within the time allowed, impeccable interpretation books of the law and customs. When the confrontation came, the sage said to the assembled examiners, "I have brought 100 of the books which contain the teachings imparted to my followers. Should you wish to inspect the others, give us a little time, for the remainder of the 1,000 books into which our work is imprisoned exist only in the hearts of the disciples, but we can write them out for you here, and I have brought 500 people to start the work immediately, should you so desire it." Vehicle. Someone complained to a Sufi sage that the stories which he gave out were interpreted in one way by some people and in other ways by others. "That is precisely their value," he said. "Surely you would not think much of even a cup out of which you could drink milk but not water, or a plate from which you could eat meat but not fruit. A cup and a plate are limited containers. How much more capable should language be to provide nutrition? The question is not, how many ways can I understand this, and why can I not see it in only one way? The question is rather, can this individual profit from what he is finding in the tales? The formula. A certain well-known teacher gave a disciple a formula and said, "Repeat this on rising in the morning, at the middle of the day, and in the evening. So long as you remain my faithful disciple, you may be sure that all your physical and worldly affairs will prosper." When he heard this, another follower of the same sage was anxious to be given the same treatment. The sage said to him, "First of all, this is a selective prescription, and not everyone can benefit from it. Secondly, even if it were necessary to assess you, the manner in which you have approached me in this matter makes it impossible to give it to you." The disciple said, "How would I have approached you if I had been in the right state?" The sage told him, "Much more tentatively. I myself certainly care little about the manner of your asking. It is only a coincidence that the abruptness of your approach would have annoyed anyone with something to give of a more material sort. But you might be able to learn from your examination of your own manner, which should be neither abrupt nor fawning, that a mind such as yours is at the moment cannot receive and work with such an exercise." The lives and doings of the masters. A dervish of the first rank was asked, "Why is it that people spend so much time and effort studying the lives and doings of the masters of the past, when their lives may have been misreported, and their doings may have been for effects to be seen at that time, and their words may be full of hidden meaning?" He said, "The purpose of such study is for the student to know what is said by and about the masters. Some of this is useful on the ordinary level. Some will become plain as the disciple progresses. Some of it is cryptic, so that its understanding will come at the right moment, only when the seeker is ready. Some is for the purpose of being interpreted by a teacher. Some of it is there to cause opposition from those who could not proceed along the way, so that it will deter them from interfering with the people of the path. Remember well that distaste for our work is usually a sign for us that such a person is shunning us, because he is one whom we ourselves should shun." Change. Partau asked Rastgu, "Why do the Sufi sheikhs work in so many different ways?" Rastgu said, "If a student thinks that it is possible to learn anything by merely memorizing or simply making bodily movements, or only doing breathing exercises, or concentrating upon companionship with a sage, such a man is not a student at all. If a teacher thinks that he can convey the teaching to anyone by making him confine himself to self-study, by insisting upon discipline or ceremonial only, it is as foolish as if the student refused to undergo any or all of these things. When studying the ways of the sages, a dervish must always remember that man learns in a host of ways to do ordinary things in the ordinary world. To expect to learn something higher with the few means which are used for teaching something lower is a mark of someone who has not become a student yet. In a guide, it is a mark of a repeater, not a teacher. It may be the mark of an imitation, but all will depend upon whether this man is a deputy of a sage, or arrogant enough to imagine that imitation is teaching. Appetite. Firoz was asked, "The books and the very presence of a man of wisdom increase the appetite for learning in the public, and also in those who wish to understand the real meaning of man. Is it not harmful to excite the anticipation of those who may not be able to profit from the teaching, and who are incapable of recognizing its beauty, meaning, and significance?" He said, "Water will attract the greedy man, but that is no argument against water. There are greedy men who are excited at the sight of apricots. If they try to steal them, they may be punished. If their greed causes them to gobble them so that their stomachs cannot sustain the load, they become sick. The owner of the orchard does not become sick." The questioner continued, "But in the interests of the thirsty man, could the water not be given to him in small amounts, so that he does himself no harm?" Firoz said, "Sometimes there is a kindly person present when he sees a crazed, thirsty one, and he prevents him from killing himself through drinking too much. At other times, as you well know, the thirsty man comes across a well, and there is nobody there to prevent him destroying himself. Even if there were a well-meaning bystander to say, 'Be careful,' the man crazed with thirst would thrust him aside and believe him to be his enemy." The questioner asked, "Is there no way in which a person may be safeguarded against these perils?" Firoz told him, "If you can find anything in this life which is without any danger of abuse and lacks risk for the stupid, tell me, and I shall myself spend all my time concentrating upon that thing. In the meantime, learn, before it may be too late, that the guide exists because the path is rough. If you, so to speak, want to be able to breathe in without breathing out, or to wake up without facing the day, you are no seeker, but a mere trumpery dilettante, and a hypocrite at that. For to call oneself something which one is not is contrary to the dignity of the people of dedication and straightforwardness."